Good morning, class. Today we'll be talking about how to write good dialogue. And you guys have, since we've been going over your short scripts or short scenes, we've been talking about, dialogue and what's good dialogue and what's good dialogue, bad dialogue. So you guys have heard a little bit about this. But what I'm going to do is just give you a short little teaching today on some tips on how to write dialogue that will help move the story along and won't waste your time or the audience's time. So it's really not that difficult if you know just the basic rules. So we're going to start out writing good dialogue, some pointers. All right. Okay, where's my thing? Okay, there it is. All right. So when you're thinking about writing dialogue, all your dialogue should pass the following criteria. It must move the story forward. I don't think I could emphasize this enough. After each conversation or exchange, the reader should be one step closer to either the climax or conclusion of your story. You shouldn't waste a word on stuff that doesn't matter. Number 2, it should reveal relevant information about the character. Each piece of dialogue, the right dialogue will give the reader insight into how the character feels, what they're thinking, what's motivating him or her to act. And thirdly, it must help the reader understand the relationship between the characters, better understand the relationship between the characters. So if your dialogue is accomplishing all the above, then you're doing a good job. If not, you're wasting time. And as you guys write, you guys will know and be able to feel this, I think. I think you'll be able to feel how it is. Okay, so the first thing to writing good dialogue is to keep it brief. Dialogue shouldn't go on for pages and pages. You shouldn't have, 4 or 5 pages of dialogue with no action in between, because that means that they're talking too much and you're not showing enough. So just like here, it says if that happens, you should probably be writing a stage play and not a screenplay, because stage plays are all talk. Very little stage direction at all, because the director does that in a stage play, but in a screenplay, you got to show it. So it's a slice and not the whole pizza. You don't need to go into lengthy exchanges to reveal important truth about the characters, their motivations, how they view the world. You should be showing it. Again, we should be showing it more than saying it. Pare the dialogue down to the minimum that you need for the characters to say to each other. So like I said, as you write and rewrite, you'll be able to do that well. Also, if dialogue goes on too long, it can start to feel like a tennis match to the audience. And it can get exhausting for them. They have to think too hard or concentrate too hard. So that's one thing that you need to know. If you can just pare it down, that would be good. Okay, the second thing you need to do is avoid small talk. And we've already talked about this a little bit, like I said, with your characters. Yeah, where are we at here? So, with your characters, avoid small talk. The only dialogue to include is the kind that reveals something necessary about character or plot. So, pick exchanges that capture the essence of the moment. Sometimes people think that if they put small talk in there, blah, 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 it's cooler or realer or more, hey dude, blah, 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 it makes it seem more real, but it really doesn't make it seem more real. How's the weather doesn't move the plot along. So if you'd like to show that the character doesn't like awkward pauses, work on characterization and scene description instead of long exchanges. You can show the character's discomfort by describing how she taps her fingers against the window pane or takes a series of sharp sighs or something like that. And that would be a better way to show it. And so, instead of saying, hey, how are you? I'm fine, how are you? Start with the action. And one time when we were going over Brent's screenplay, he started out with the, hey, how are you, blah, blah, blah. But then he went into this, he was talking to this guy talking to this girl about a book she was reading. And we were just talking about how that would be a good place to start, because he's starting with action. starting with substance and not the hey, how are you? So that wastes a lot of time, especially in a short script. So you must know that. Okay. So no introductions. That would be good. Okay, and don't info dump. That's the third thing. You need to use dialogue to reveal important info about the characters. It's not a vehicle to dump big loads of information on your audience. So if a lot of your exposition is coming through the dialogue, that's not good, because you're a bunch of information at once. They do that sometimes in action movies where it's a military thing and officer, the 5-star general is blah blah blah, and we have to do blah, and then by the end of that exchange you're like, oh my god, I didn't really get all of that, and it kind of offends the audience too. But your characters should not go into lengthy reasons why they're doing what they're doing either. Just show it instead. So if you have a character that is explaining what they're doing and blah, 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 you're not showing it. You didn't show it. The audience didn't see it. If you have to do that, so there's no reason to do that ever. That's probably something I would say never do. And then if you have to dump a bunch of exposition into a scene, do it through action and keep the dialogue out of it as much as possible. That's something I already said. So also something I've said again, I don't know if I've explained it that well, but audiences are insulted if your dialogue is too on the nose. They want to know that you trust them to put the smaller pieces together themselves. So D.W. Griffith, who was the father of editing, of cinema editing really, figured that out. He would show one scene of somebody looking to the left, and then the next scene was what he was looking at. And he realized that the audiences could make that connection themselves. He didn't have to do something in between to show one scene with the other scene. If you have things framed in when the director will do that, if it's framed in the scene enough, you don't have to explain everything. And please don't. So information should be revealed a little at a time also. You need to build tension. You need to build the story. You need to reveal only when it's necessary to reveal or at the right time to reveal. So that's something that you guys can all do, well, that you'll learn to do as you go along. The difference between dumping and revealing relevant information, info dump is a large amount of exposition given all at once, left for the audience to sort out. And so relevant information is delivered in a more subtle way. So we've talked about that. So the next thing you need to do is to give your characters a unique way of speaking. And one way to do that is through establishing patterns in speech. So, everyone speaks differently. If they're more fiery and angry, they're going to be more short with people. They're going to say, when someone says, "Can you do that?" and they would say, "Yeah, what?" Or, what do you want? Or someone walks in the room and they say, "Yeah, what?" That would be something that a brusque, sort of angry, dominant character would say. If your character is more, shy or polite or charming, if you ask them to do something, they would say, "Of course." Instead of yeah, right, So it's just, you can characterize your characters through word choice. And I said here that a charming character would say, "Of course," if you ask them something, and a brusque character would say, "Yeah, whatever," So, and also you can establish patterns of speech. So do they speak in a deliberate, flowy manner or in a sharp staccato? So if you know the cadence of your character, you can create consistency in the script and with the character. What really needs to happen is somebody reading the script should be able to tell who they're reading without looking at the character name. If you're doing your job and establishing those, like I said, those patterns of speech, using the right word choice to create the voice of the person that the right voice of the personality of the person that's speaking. So know your characters, know the personality, know how someone with that personality would speak, and then you'll be able to do your characters and make them more unique. And also for men and women, you write women differently than men. A woman would say something a certain way, a man would say something a certain way. So an older person would say something a certain way, a younger person would say something a certain way. So you got to know your character, know their age, their demographic, male, female, blah, blah, blah. Okay. This is going to be a very short lecture, so we don't have to worry too much about it. Okay. So then the next thing we need to worry about is being consistent. So as your character speaks, they should stay consistent with who they are, and I kind of just said that, in the last thing. A shy, deprecating character would not automatically become bold and acerbic in the middle of the story, just out of nowhere, unless you're building the story where they come out of their shell and become more assertive. Then maybe, but they may not be to the bold and acerbic level even at that. So you have to think of again, what's your character's personality? What would they say? How would they say it based on their personality and their character? So like I said, again, reiterating, know who your characters are. Okay, the next thing we need to know about dialogue is how to create suspense. And this is something I'm not very good at. I'm not great at writing dialogue anyway, but this is something I'm definitely not good at for some reason. And I usually have somebody who's good at writing dialogue take a pass over my scripts when I write them and kind of clean up the dialogue that's like that. And you guys can do that too. I know right now you guys don't know each other well enough to know who's better at writing plot and who's better at writing dialogue. Usually you're good at one or the other. Some people are good at both, but I'm better at plot and less good at dialogue, but I can do it. I have to work really hard at it, but I can do it. But some people are really good at writing characters and writing dialogue and better than keeping the plot, the plot points strong and keeping everything consistent and the story moving along with the plot that way. And you'll see that in a lot of character-driven pieces and European films and stuff like that, that are more character-driven. You'll see really good dialogue, really good characterization through dialogue, stuff like that, but not necessarily a very good plot structure going on. American films, because we're so action-oriented, we're really good at plot, moving plots along. We have a lot of action movies and a lot of movies that are very plot-driven. So in creating suspense, you have to create realistic interaction between your characters and honor the fact that most people leave a lot of things unsaid. And you can create suspense and sort of tension that way, where we know, even using dramatic irony, we know what's going on, but they don't necessarily know what's going on inside of them. That's making them, there's a lot of unsaid things that we know about, so we can see that tension building. So you can show the characters' motivations and desires before the scene, and then let it play out using the dialogue with the reader or the audience wanting a resolution that doesn't quite happen yet. So you just give them a little bit at a time and write the dialogue so that you're giving out just the right amount of information, but not too much, not revealing too much, but enough to create tension and leaving the audience wanting more. So in order to create suspense or tension, answer the following questions to set up your scene for suspense. Is there one character in your scene that has the upper hand, has more power than the other one in that situation? Second thing to ask is the other character seething just under the surface? Is there something that we know that they are going through that they don't know, or the person they're in contact with doesn't know? Like, this person's angry at the other person, or this person is usually angry, upset, or whatever. Then what does the reader find out through the exchange? So in those tense moments, we should be able to understand more about the character, what's going on, what's going on inside of them. The other character then finds out what's going on inside of them, and or they find out what's going on inside of them, or we find out what's going on inside of them, depending whether it's drama, dramatic irony, blah, blah, blah. So information should be information about the inside of the person should be revealed through the exchange. Why they're feeling the way they're feeling or whatever. So you can control all of this through the dialogue. You can play it out, you can bring it out, you can build that tension, and like I said, bring that tension together. You have to work on it. I have to work on it, that's for sure, on that part of it. Okay, honor the relationship. This is good, because characters tend to speak differently based on who they're speaking to. So a character will speak differently to his mother than he does to his best friend. So most people don't go to their mom and say, "What up, dude?" Sometimes they don't say that to their best friend, but you definitely wouldn't speak to your mother that way, or your boss, or there's formal relationships. There's degrees of formality in relationships, and so your characters have to honor that, else it's just not going to seem real, obviously. And that won't shift the consistency. It will give more depth and realness to the character because they're acting as a real character in real life would. So remember that. Remember what the actual relationship is between characters, the power relationships, the authority relationships, the pecking order of the relationship, blah, blah, blah. So here we are with my favorite thing, show, don't tell. So this is one thing that screenwriters do more than anything, and even people that write novels and stuff like that. They underestimate the audience. Audiences like to see the scene and pick up cues and come to a conclusion themselves instead of being told by you what to think. If you're telling them what to think along the way, they're going to get so super bored. They're going to walk out of the movie theater. And like I said, I've read hundreds of scripts probably in my life, and I've seen this, especially newer screenwriters do this all the time. Just tell too much, explain too much, give big long lectures to the audience, and it's just not fun for them. So just remember, audiences like to see stuff, and you need to just give them things that they can put together themselves. And because we're, especially Americans, like I've said before, are very sophisticated movie watchers because we've watched hundreds of movies in our lives. We can do this stuff. We did it when we were little kids. I mean, they do it with little kids movies. Little kids can pick up on stuff and figure out what's coming next by what was done before, if you do it in the right way. So don't tell your audience what to think. Also, dialogue shouldn't be completely on the nose and explain exactly what the character is thinking and feeling. It's better to use body language and facial expressions and actions. So don't have the character say, "I'm angry." Show they're angry through their behavior, i.e. John threw the lamp against the wall, or whatever. You can show it, and it's better to like in screenwriting, it's better to show more than to say more. And I can't emphasize that enough. You got to think really hard how to show something, because film is a visual medium. So you need to show it more than say it. Like I said, two people sitting across the table, blah, 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 is boring. Just, you need to show stuff. There has to be action within the speaking. And it just makes it a whole heck of a lot more interesting for the people who are watching it. And once, like I said, we write stuff for other people, not for ourselves. We write stuff for an audience, not for ourselves. So we have to consider the audience and be considerate of them. Okay, greetings and goodbyes are not necessary. They are hardly ever necessary. So, writing the blow-by-blow goodbye or introduction. "Hi, I'm Jan. Hi, it reminds me of my French class in high school. Oui, salut, les amis. Oui, ça va, Jacques? Oui, ça va." It's like, leave it for French class. Instead, set up a scene by describing how the character enters or leaves the scene. So, again, I'll use Brent's screenplay. The guy gets off, goes into he's a coffee mate. He hands the girl his coffee. He looks at her. We see his face. We see a clip of his face. He looks like he likes her. We see him take his robe off, hang it up. He walks out and he walks up to her and says, "Hey, I see you're reading The Lord of the Rings. That's my favorite book." Right? That's the way that instead of, the hellos and the goodbyes and blah blah blah, it's just you start by describing how the characters enters or leaves the scene, how they meet in the scene, and without all that stuff. Not necessary. Waste of words. Okay. Avoid speeches and soliloquies. Definitely. I mean, some of us, I'm kind of a long-winded person myself, but most people in conversation form do not have the privilege of extended speech, and that is true. So your characters in your script shouldn't either. They're almost always interrupted because who wants to listen to someone natter on and on? In plays, this is done a lot, but this should not be done in movies, because again, it bores your audience, it offends your audience. They want, like I said, they want to come up with the conclusions themselves by the cues that you show them. So don't explain why. Don't have a long soliloquy why they're doing something, what they want to do. Just show the why, show the what, show the how, show it, and then your people will get it. Okay, now these two are very, very important. All right. So, and then the last thing you need to do is always read your dialogue aloud. Read your script with somebody so you know if the dialogue flows. If you're tripping over your words and it doesn't sound right, then the actor who's reading it won't be able to make it flow when they perform it, because it's just not dialogue that flows. You guys will be able to feel the cadence and the rhythm of your dialogue. There's a beat to it, like in any song or whatever. There's a cadence and a rhythm. You can feel when it's off or when it's on. So the action and interaction needs to flow like by meter, really, and just like the drummer and the bass player. So, and everything that's written should sound like what an actual person would say. If it's not, it's time to erase it and try again. So it's very, very important to read your dialogue aloud, read with somebody, or have two other people read it with you. And then you're just sitting there listening to it, and then you can do it. So definitely do that before you turn in your scripts, especially the last script, your final script, which will be your final. Your fifth version of script will be turned in as your final grade instead of a final exam. So at least, definitely by then, you should be reading your dialogue aloud, seeing everything slowing down, and know how to do that. So those are my few little tips for writing good dialogue. It shouldn't be too hard. Now that you've seen this stuff, I had Jason give you a handout too, some tips on what to do and not to do when you're writing dialogue. And if you avoid the things that I just talked about to avoid and do the things I just talked about to do, you can't go wrong. The basic thing you need to do is just use your words economically and show more than you tell. Okay, so we'll get on to the rest of the class. Talk to you guys in a minute.